Welcome back, guys, and welcome to a cosy little scene. We find ourselves back at the Beer Merchant's tap, don't we, Johnny?
We do, on a cold wintry night.
Oh.
And although it was generally brewed for the summer, we also think that the saison is quite a nice drink for a night like this.
Why not?
Roaring fire / LED light.
Yep.
2 cameras staring straight at you. It's almost Dickensian in feel.
It's beautiful, lovely scene.
Today we're going to be talking about saisons, mostly because saisons are a very misunderstood style. I think because most of the people producing it these days are producing very idiosyncratic, unusual versions of said saisons. So we're going to teach you the history of saison, how it went through its modern phase, and how it's now moved into what is probably its postmodern phase.
Postmodern, very arty, Johnny.
It's very you, Brad.
Talking of art and supporting the arts and independent content, how about our Patreon, Johnny?
Yes.
How we make everything work.
So everything we do here is supported by our Patreon supporters, including Beer Merchants, so the Beer Merchants tap on lots of companies, but also individuals like yourselves who can donate between $1 and $30 a month to what we do. You'll get cool merch in return and a warm, tingly feeling that's not just related to the alcohol you're drinking, but to supporting independent content, such as our lesson in saison.
Yes.
Right, so link to that is in the description, but we're going to get stuck into the history of saison. If you could open up our petty saison, we're going to start to some extent where saison started. So saison is a style, the name saison comes from the saisonniers, who were the people who worked in the fields of Wallonia in Belgium and also in France.
So they were seasonal workers.
Seasonal workers in the farm. So they'd come in at harvest time or in preparation for harvest and do all the hard, heavy lifting of the harvest.
Got you.
Now, some of their payment would have been in beer. They'd have been kept fed and watered by the farm that was running it, and part of that, the responsibility fell on the farmer to give them beer. Now back then, it might have been because the water wasn't clean enough to drink, so boiling it is one way of making it safe. Beer is boiled, or it might have just been that it was called liquid bread by the monks, beer, because it's full of calories, full of vitamins.
Keeps them going.
Exactly that.
It's like a liquid, like a Lucozade in the morning.
So these saisonniers were given it often for lunch. That was their lunch. So they would drink loads of this saison that was made by the farm. Now, obviously, back then we didn't know what we knew what fermentation was. We didn't really know what yeast was.
Yeah.
We knew that there was something happening. Some people thought it was a religious thing. It was a gift from God. Some people knew that if they used certain vessels that they'd used before, they'd get better beer than if they used new ones. So they understood that there was something in that cask or that vessel.
Some magic.
Yeah, so it was somewhere between religion, superstition and science. But all of the saisons when they were first made would have been mixed fermentation. So they'd have been naturally, spontaneously fermented. It would have been air, it would have been yeast that was on these different bits of equipment that would have fermented these beers. So they would have all been really funky. So originally saisons were funky, and Petit Saison from one of our favourite breweries in the world, Burning Sky down in Sussex, is along those lines. So it's a mixed fermentation saison. He's put it in white wine barrels for an extra bit of oak and funk, but otherwise this is what a saison might have tasted like back then. So there's a little bit of lactic character, a little bit of Brett character, but it's very low ABV.
It's low ABV, it's balanced, isn't it? That's the thing with a lot of saisons, they're kind of wacky and angular.
Exactly, so we'll get onto why that started happening. But it's 3.2, which is probably closer to what original saisons would have been. They would have been table beers, they wouldn't have been too strong, they'd have been quite sweet, quite funky, with lots of lactic characters. This is like a lemon yogurt with a little bit of funk and a nice grainy character to it. That's what I get.
It's soft, it's delicate.
Yeah.
It's lemony, isn't it?
And it's incredibly crushable. Saison is supposed to be the crushable style because it's what you drank when you were hot and sweaty and harvesting. So when somebody says that a saison isn't mixed fermentation, that a saison shouldn't be sour, you can say, well, technically. And all great conversations start with that phrase.
Oh, yes. Well, that was a lovely, gentle start to proceedings, Jonny.
Wasn't it just? Could you have manhandled some big machinery after a couple of those?
I think I'd need to drink a few more to operate heavy machinery.
To drink a few more?
Yeah. Because I don't know what I'm doing, so I need to build up my confidence.
Right, so now I am pouring you the classic saison. So when people talk about saison, this is what they think it came from, and to some extent, they're right. So this is Saison DuPont, a world classic, one of the best beers in the world. This comes from a similar background to those farmhouse style Saisons.
Yeah.
These old school mixed ferment Saisons. But the guy who founded Saison DuPont, he started brewing there, he had a lab background. So he got hold of yeast. By this point, about 1950s, we had labs, we knew what yeast was, and he isolated and got his own house yeast that wasn't producing all of these other wild, funky things. And he started brewing, when he got a farm, this beer.
Right. So this is it's a less wild version.
There's no wildness to it at all. He knew exactly what yeast he was putting in. He was using modern technology, and in doing so, he completely changed what we think of as a saison. So this is the modern saison. We think of this as the traditional saison. No, this is the modern saison. This is clean, bright, spicy.
Spicy boy.
Right? And what's really interesting about Saison DuPont, as we're about to find out, is the huge spicy aroma.
Whoa.
So it's got loads and loads of earthy spice, lots and lots of sweet grain, and a kind of zippy, a zippy spiciness that some people confuse with sourness on the aroma. And that comes from the fact that this particular strain that he chose could ferment really, really warm, like blood temperature, like 32 degrees. So about 10 degrees more than like a standard West Coast yeast.
Like a vampire strain. Blood.
Don't they like cold?
No, I feel like they like hot blood.
Hot blood but cold spaces.
Maybe. That's the name of my golf band.
That's probably cutting from floor. Hot blood but cold spaces.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong. So there's banana, there's clove, there's like turmeric spices, then there's more angular spices, things that are just a bit zippy, and then always underneath like a toasted brioche, malty kind of depth to it, which wouldn't have been there in the originals because all of that would have just been fermented straight out by the Brett.
It's amazing how different that is to that.
Yeah. And yet they're labelled the same. It's mad, isn't it? So the third kind of saison is the postmodern saison.
Right.
So it's a saison that might take a little bit of inspiration from this. It'll probably be higher ABV. It'll probably have a little bit more residual sweetness to it from the malt. But it will also take some inspiration from the traditional, the old school saison by being mixed fermentation. So that's the joy of being at the Beer Merchant's Tap with 500 different bottles and cans in the fridge. Just popped out and grabbed me a Yonder saison.
Why not?
So now
Yonder.
So we put them in our breweries to watch in 2019. They've had a good year, but I think 2020 might be even better for them. So this is a postmodern saison, so one that is specifically trying to be funky and excitable, whereas it used to be that you'd want as clean fermentation as you could get in your farmhouse. Now these guys are like, no, we want that funk.
They're funky guys.
Funky guys, and they've also added gorse.
Gorse.
Which is really traditional. They've used stuff from their backyard or from the surrounding areas. That's farmhouse style brewing.
Yeah, man.
But it's postmodern. We were picking gorse with them when we went to see them. So that'll be at the end of the video too. So there's a definite vegetalness, there's a definite sweetness as well, a little bit of Saison DuPont's brioche-ness, but it's drier and loads of lactic, right?
Oh, I love that tingle.
It's a tingler.
This is my favourite of the bunch. Even better than Saison DuPont. I crush this. It's the lemony, yogurty. It's almost like a crispy boy for me.
It's a sour boy.
It's a sour, crispy boy. I don't know what that is.
An acid boy. So you can see the postmodern saison way they've really gone for it. They've really wanted that funk, that terroir, that local flavour. And that's what a lot of the modern saisons are and why people get confused. People think that all saisons have to be like this. They really don't. And saison, a bit like IPA, you've got black IPA, you've got New England IPA, you've got West Coast IPA, you've got session IPA, you've got black IPA. All these different ways of presenting the same kind of idea. So I hope that helps you guys work out what a saison is and what it's not. And next time somebody says that's not a saison, it's not sour, you can go, well, it depends which century you're thinking about. We've got loads of cool videos popping up after our little outro bit, where you can learn more about saisons, more about mixed fermentation, and more about Yonder.
Oh yeah.
But otherwise, please do join our Patreon, and we will see you guys next week for some more informed nonsense.